So here's the question now. He's shown us that his hometown, his relatives, and his household have rejected him. And he's told them that, of course, this is what we could expect, that a prophet is not without honor except among them. And he could do no mighty work there. Here's a theological troublesome verse, right? He could do no mighty work there. But then it says, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. The way I interpret, he could do no mighty work there. Remember in the previous chapter, you had crowds pressing in on him, wanting to be around him, believing him maybe, but all the while seeing that he had the power to do what they believed he could do at times. And that was surrounding him there. Here, that's not happening. Another way to say that is, another reason not to be like these Nazarenes is don't be prayerless. The reason there's no mighty work being done here is because nobody was asking. Because nobody believed. Do you see? The point in the fact that except that he laid hands on a few people and healed them, there's two possibilities there. Maybe two people, maybe a couple people came to him, but maybe nobody came. And you remember the story of Jesus who goes to the pool of Siloam? And there's all these crippled people laying around this pool waiting for it to be stirred up. And Jesus walks up to this guy and says, "You want to be healed?" And all the guy does is grunts at him. "Oh, I can't ever get in. Everybody steps in front of me. I got nobody to put me in the pool." He doesn't ask Jesus for anything, and Jesus heals him. It's possible that that's maybe what he did. You know how gracious he is and how merciful he is. He might have just found some people who were suffering, found someone who was sick, saw someone who was sick, walked up and healed them. That's how wonderfully merciful he is. And he marveled at their unbelief. So now I want to ask this question. When you've been rejected by your family, or when you shared the gospel with somebody, what's your response? What do you do? And notice what he does. Because here, let me give you a thought about what Jesus could think. I've been with these people for 30 years. I've walked the line. I have done everything. I've done everything for them. I've served them. I've forgiven them and 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 forgiven them. I have done everything for these people. I've built some of their homes. I've worked for them for free. Some of them wronged me and I didn't make them pay. And they wouldn't believe. He could say, "I'm done with this." I mean, he wouldn't. But just think, this is the way we do, isn't it? We think, well, what can I do now? That's not what we're to think. That's not what we're to do. What did Jesus do? Notice. He went out among the villages teaching. Now, remember, he had returned there after being there 30 years, so he kept coming, didn't he? Right? That's my point. He didn't give up, did he? He didn't give up. Why? Why would Jesus do this? This is a question. I'm going to answer why he did this, and I want you to think about this for yourself. Why did he come back after all that time? After, he's starting his ministry and he comes back. Why is he still not giving up? Think about that. Why is he still not giving up? Here's why he's not giving up. Because Jesus knows Jesus is under spiritual, loving leadership. Jesus submits to spiritual, loving leadership. Who's Jesus submitting to? The Father. There's nobody, no human being who isn't under authority. Jesus continues his ministry because his Father, all love comes from him. And as a man, he's receiving all this love from the Father to give it to others. He is under spiritual, loving leadership. Jesus is submitting to that and goes forward even though nobody follows him. Now that's so important to understand, because I talk to so many men who say, oh, I do this at work, or I do this at home, and I'm trying to be a good leader. I'm trying to, and they're not following me. And so you know what they conclude? They conclude this. They conclude, well, I'm not a good leader. So think about it. What if Jesus concluded, based on what these people did to him, that he was a good leader or not? Where do you find whether or not you're a good leader? Do you look at the people following you? If Jesus did that, he would determine he's not a good leader. The only way you will ever be a good husband, a good mother, a good father, a good spiritual leader is if you're following Jesus. Period. Don't get preoccupied with wondering if this person's going to come along and join the party. They may not. But you set a pace as a spiritual leader. You set a pace for the people who God has entrusted to you, and you're accountable to him. You're accountable to him. And let that be how you do it. Because here's what happens, right? Jesus just about gets killed by these people. Watch what's happening here. Jesus just about gets killed by these people. He tells them the truth. They know him. It's not like, well, they didn't understand, right? In fact, in Romans it says they suppress the truth in unrighteousness. How do they suppress what they don't know? They don't. They suppress the truth. They know the truth. They just don't like it, right? You see? So here, these people, Jesus was just very clear in his message, right? Is there any doubt that Jesus wasn't perspicuous, right? He's clear. That's what it means. He's clear. He was clear in his message, and the people rejected him, and now they attempt to kill him. And he escapes, and then he says to the 12, come here. I'm now going to send you. Think about this for a minute, right? This guy, our leader, just about got killed, run off a cliff, and now he's going to send us? What you have here is Jesus is now going to send out people to do what he does. Are these men going to submit to his spiritual leadership? Because you know how these disciples are, right? They always obey. They never question anything. He called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2. Please understand, this is Jesus' way of doing it. Jesus, why don't you do it, why don't you send out 4 groups of 3? Oh, Jesus, you partnered me with the wrong guy. And Judas might be saying, I'd rather go myself, by myself, right? Just give me some of that power and let me go, I can make some money doing this, right? Jesus, his way of doing it, you got to submit to the spiritual leader's way of doing it. My wife's done that. And it hasn't been easy. Being a pastor, you're called to do something that nobody understands. I mean, I know you kind of understand, but you don't really understand because it's strange, and it's precarious and all these things. And she hasn't been called. So she's looking at this from the outside, and she's like, I don't understand why you got to do this. But nonetheless, she submits to the spiritual leadership because her hoping that I'm following God. And it doesn't make sense at times. Why 2 by 2? Doesn't make sense. Why can't I bring anything? Right? He charged them, don't bring anything except staff, no bread, no bag, no money. Oh, Jesus, I get low insulin. No bread, no bag, no money in their belts. Wear sandals and put on 2 tunics. This is Jesus' way of doing ministry. Here's the thing. You got to understand this. Spiritual leadership, well, and as parents, you know this. From one point of view, it looks like, well, it's fun, right? Parents get to do all the things they want to do. They can do whatever they want, right? From the kid perspective, right? Or sometimes wives look at their husband and says, well, why does he get to lead, right? He gets to get all the fun stuff or whatever. And we can always do that, right? Here's the thing, you do understand this as parents. You're not as free as they think you are you? Right? You got more responsibility than you know they want. And that's true of spiritual leaders. They have more responsibility, like Miriam, right? Miriam and Aaron. They didn't understand. They didn't have the pressure of 1 million people, right? They didn't have the pressure of going up, being with God, and bringing down these stones. And, I mean, gee whiz. Look at these people now. What did I do wrong, Moses might think, right? So please understand that it's not easy. You want to make your spiritual leader, you want to make it easy for them. Because all they're trying to do, and this is what they're hearing the same thing you are right now, all they're trying to do is follow Jesus. That's what they're trying really hard to do. And you need, if they're not, and let me just say this, if they're not telling you to sin, then you should follow them. Even if it's a mistake. Notice I said, not if it's a sin, but even if it's a mistake, even if it doesn't fit your judgment, you need to follow them. Because your trust isn't in their judgment, right? Where's your trust? Right? I mean, you all live this every day. We have a political system that we look at and we say, yeah, we got to follow it, but my goodness, right? We do have to wear a mask to go into Goodwill, right? We do have to do these things. And we'll do it. And we'll go along with it because we can do that. And we're gracious people. So let me just end by pointing out the kind of ministry people have who are under spiritual leadership. They have a ministry of simplicity and authority. Notice, they're given authority over unclean spirits. Okay, Jesus is saying, I'm giving you authority over unclean spirits. He says that to Peter, and Peter's standing there. Just imagine this for a minute. Peter's standing right there. Anything change? Is Peter, does a halo appear around Peter's head, right? Does anything change externally? No. Oh, great, Peter. You got authority over things we can't even see. So understand, spiritual authority isn't something that you necessarily see as a glorious thing in people. Did Jesus walk around with a different color robe than everybody else? Was he glowing? No. If he was glowing, they might have gone along. Right? So understand, your spiritual leaders don't look like much. And that's the whole point here. They're to go out in simplicity with authority. And their authority doesn't come from themselves, it comes from Jesus. It comes from the message. That's where the authority comes from. So when you do that, though, right, what happens? I'm just going to sum this up really quick. What happens? Well, look at verse 30. The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And then they get to spend time with Jesus. Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest for a while, for there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. So, isn't that wonderful? You're under spiritual leadership. Jesus will give you the rest. You need to have that rest with him. As you got to be filled up, right, to go do what you do as a spiritual leader. And that's an exciting little thing there, but there's one other illustration here. And we'll probably talk more about this next week. But the other illustration here is John the Baptist was a spiritual leader. And in this context, this spiritual leader who doesn't compromise and stays on mission loses his head. So just accept this, ladies and gentlemen, my brothers and sisters, that following a spiritual leader or being a spiritual leader doesn't always end well. Here. Because while John the Baptist may have lost his head, Herod lost his soul. because he didn't submit to John the Baptist's spiritual leadership, did he? So realize that spiritual leadership should be followed to the danger of your own soul, to the danger of Herod's soul. Your spiritual leader is concerned about your soul. And if they haven't been lately, they've heard this message now, and they're going to be. And we need to be the kind of spiritual leaders. We need to be the kind of spiritual leaders that Moses was. We don't jump at the fact that someone doesn't do what we say. Or we don't jump at the fact when they argue when we ask them to do something. We look to the Lord to correct it. Go pray about it. Tattle on them. Trust me. That's what you saw with Moses, isn't it? You're not a leader. You're not a leader because your kids follow you. You're not a leader because your wife follows you. You're not a leader because your wife thinks you're a leader. Why are you a leader? You're a leader because Jesus says you're a leader. So I want you to start embracing and asking yourself, am I submitting to spiritual leadership? Let's just isolate it. We can just isolate it to the church. Am I submitting to the spiritual leadership of my church? And pray that you would be. Because it would be for your good and your joy. And for the joy of those around you. And pray for me. And pray for our board. You know what kind of people you want on your board? You know what kind of people you want? You know what kind of person you want me to be? You want me to be gentle and lowly in heart. You want me to be meek. So pray that I would be meek. And I know, wives, pray for your husbands to be meek. They want to be meek too. They want to be humble. They want to be lowly in heart. Children, pray for your parents to be meek. Pray for them to be alive with Christ. And communing with Christ and enjoying Christ, because they're so much more easy. They ask you things so much better when they're that way, and there's so much more joy to follow them when they're that way.